everybody. It's Mark Thompson, and I'm so thrilled to have Dr. Patrick with us today. And I call him that because he's a personal friend, he's a mentor, he's a loving physician who became the leader of an extraordinary organization that's innovating in so many different categories. And I think having an influence around the world in the way he shows up for work and the way he's been able to develop an organization that's built to last. And so as chief executives and C-level executives who are listening to this program and watching it now, I wanted to welcome you, Patrick, with an open heart, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Mark. I consider you a good friend and mentor as well, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
I have been so enormously impressed at how your organization has been among the first responders to save lives, and then having to continue to save lives, and then continue to save lives again. This was in addition to your day job managing the crisis. What are some of the lessons as you look back, maybe over an 18-month period, where there's been many times you've had to really ask people to double click on something that they came to this role for in the first place, which is to help keep healthy families and communities? How do you get people to re-engage or continue to engage when the marathon just seems to get longer?
Well, that's a great point. And it does. At first, we thought, hey, this may just be a few months. And then I was at an event last night when they talked about, now that we're past the pandemic, it's great to see people here. And we thought, a few of us looked at each other and said, oh, we're not past it yet. We're still going. And how do you get people going? And a lot of that for me, it's about our mission and our people. And for us, our mission is to take care of the kids in our community and beyond. So at least early on, that's really easy to get people to rally around and step up, show up for the mission and be here for the kids. But after a while, that is something that only can go so long. And I think it's really important at the same time that we're focused on the mission to make sure that we were there for the people who were carrying that out. So early in the pandemic and even now throughout, it's about being there for the events, behind the scenes. What can we do to help our people? What can we do to make sure they're resilient? Reminding them that this is a marathon, not a race. So when they're not at the hospital, when they're not at their job, just tap out, exercise, be healthy, be good to yourself, because we need you to be full force when you come back in and care for the kids.
When you think about the development of people during a time like this, and they often would be attracted to this profession because they are deeply caring folks, they had to go through the crucible of much of their healthcare training, which forced them into a marathon-like activity. When I hear about what docs have to do to be qualified and intern and so forth, is this part of the lifestyle of a number of people in healthcare that would allow them to double click here, or can normal people learn from the rest of you on how it is that you keep on giving with such levels of generosity when you're exhausted?
I think we're a microcosm of society, and I see it in not just healthcare, but through all walks of life. Certainly in our community in San Diego, the way that we've all banded together and stepped up in order to help one another get through this. There certainly are those individuals who thrive on the adrenaline and thrive on the moment, and they may end up in an emergency room or in a critical care setting. But then there are also people like the rest of us who don't necessarily have that every single day that you can keep it up at that pace. And I think even for those who thrive at it, it can't be every day. So it is important to step back and to be able to remember we're developing our teams. We need to be able to recruit the right folks that have the right mindset. In the middle of all this, our nation faced another pandemic that we realized with racial inequities. And we felt as a microcosm of society, caring for all the kids in our community, regardless of where he or she or they came from, that was really important for us as well. So in addition to the pandemic work of the COVID-19, we also had an eye and a lens toward ensuring that we were providing an equitable place to work for all of our workforce, and also an equitable place of care for all the children and families in the community.
It's inspiring work. Now, you personally, you're of the tribe of the former rather than the latter. You're the critical care guy who was drawn to this. Could you talk about what really brought you on this mission yourself as an individual, and how you ended up where you are today?
Absolutely. I think had you asked me in, I guess, the year 2000, when I got out of my cardiac electrophysiology fellowship, that I'd be sitting here 21 years later doing this job, I might have had to check your brain. but life works in mysterious ways and doors opened up. And I loved at the bedside caring for a child or a family at a time, and felt like I was doing a good job of it in my microcosm of the world. But I also really enjoyed, I had a wonderful mentor early on who was all about people, and he was all about service of what we were there for as physicians was to take care of the families and the kids. And it was a business and we had to provide good service, and really taught me a lot about making sure you put the others around you first. It's a team sport. Healthcare is absolutely a team sport. To be successful in the ICU, in the cath lab, or in the clinic, he helped us realize that we had to have the whole team around us, and we were just one piece of that team as a clinician. So if I fast forward to this role where I'm leading a team of amazingly brilliant people that came from their different walks of life, maybe whether it was HR, legal, or compliance, or those that are in the medical side of it that I perhaps knew a bit more about, they absolutely are smarter than me. So when I'm in the room, I'm not the smartest one in the room. My job is to make sure, much like if it was in a code or in an ICU, that I was orchestrating the team to make sure that they could all have the tools and what they need in order to execute on our mission. So I think for me, it was kind of when those opportunities came up to step away from the bedside, but step into the leadership roles in healthcare, it still gave me the opportunity. The way I looked at it is, rather than one child at a time, I'm going to be able to influence maybe hundreds or even thousands at a time by taking my past life experiences and being able to bring them to bear and help shape our team here now at Rady Children's or wherever I may be.
You know, the process that you described there reminds me very much of what I hear on the journey of many executives who started out in a deep expertise, technical area, and then they found other ways to get scale and, in a sense, have or leverage that 100, 1,000, 10,000 fold. And was that really how it went for you? Because you had to go extra deep also with your specialty, and then to be maybe invited for the first time to go left versus right. How did you make that call?
It was an interesting transition because I don't think everybody is ready for that. And one of our favorite people in the world is Marshall Goldsmith. And actually, I had the opportunity early on in my career, well before I ever knew I'd be lucky enough to meet you and Marshall and work with you and consider you friends, to read "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And that is so true. So the skills that maybe made me really good at the bedside every day weren't always necessarily applicable to the next role. Although I've tried to kind of pick and choose which ones, team building, things like that would be applicable in the next one. But I had to be able to kind of leave the past role behind. And particularly before being CEO here at Rady Children's, I was Chief Operating Officer at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And that is a very different role. And I had to come here and remember that what got me here won't get me there, and to be able to have that transition. And I think those lessons in life and being able to read books like that and get to know people like you and Marshall have really helped me succeed in these roles.
Well, that's very generous of you to say. You've been a person who's been engaged in a very deep and thoughtful and empathic way in reading your audience and getting to know the context and the culture of the place that you're serving, whether it's Atlanta or in San Diego. That's a very powerful skill, particularly for a person who might have spent most of their career in a specific technical area. You have the IQ and the EQ going at an amazing rate here, Patrick. And I'm thinking about how many different types of stakeholders as a chief executive we all need to step into. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you was how you consider the various stakeholders and start to learn the languages of those stakeholders as you were making the transition, let's say from Georgia to Southern California. How did you go about that process that we might learn from?
It was, I had some amazing people here in our organizational development team at Rady Children's that were very thoughtful about the transition when I came to San Diego. And thankfully, I got here a year before the pandemic, because I'm not sure I would have been able to do what I did. And what I did was, we called it Team Rady. And I took that first year really to listen. Obviously, there are fires and things you need to put out along the way, but I came here to lead a place that was already great. And it's how do you get it even to that next transformational level is what the board asked. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it is one of the things that you hear. And if it wasn't, why do that? So I spent 20% of my time every week going to different departments across the organization and listening and getting to know the environmental services person who told me that all the little tools that she had to clean the bone marrow transplant room, that were because she understood that if she didn't do it right, the next child could get an infection and die. So clearly, her language, what she understood about our mission and how it had been driven in by the people before me. So people before me had driven that was the core of the mission. But going across the organization and learning what everybody did really gave me an amazing depth and breadth of all the people here across our health system. We're more than a hospital. We're a health system well beyond the walls of our acute care hospital. And it absolutely was a key part of why we've been able to be successful even through the pandemic.
When you think about the different groups that you're influencing and impacting, I remember at one point you were talking about the 4 or 5 Ps in terms of how you were organizing. You're thinking about people and strategy and purpose. But what are some of the tools that you would offer to someone who's stepping into seat for the first time, or perhaps gently, how would you been appreciative of getting some advice as you were first stepping into a chief executive's role?
Yeah, and that's a definite transition when you step in. And I think, and I did get advice, thankfully, from other CEOs. And then I was fortunate enough to meet you and Marshall relatively early in the transition. And the listening piece was key. And I think resisting the urge to come in and feel like I must make a mark right now. But this place had survived for 65 plus years before I got here, and not only survived, but thrived and become a national presence. So recognizing that I'm here to help it get to the next level, but there's a lot of history and knowledge here that I need to listen to and learn to. And my job wasn't to make San Diego Atlanta. It may be to bring some of the things from there and here. So listening was key. And then also recognizing, and this is something I learned from you and Marshall, even drove it more to me, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And that's not why I'm here. And that sometimes when you've been through medical school and you've gone through 7 years of postgraduate training, you tend to forget that, no, I really am not the smartest guy in the room. And fortunately, I'm a Florida Gator, so I realized early on I'm probably not the smartest guy in the room. But all kidding aside, that lesson of that my job isn't to have an answer immediately. And that when you come in as the CEO, you think, I have to have a good answer. I have to have a smart answer. And I really did learn that from you guys more, you and Marshall, to say that, no, I don't. And it's okay for me just to listen and to not necessarily have the solution, but to then say, how do we get the right people here to help you solve whatever problem it is you're trying to solve, and make sure that they have the tools and the resources.
That's a disarming and vulnerable and wonderfully humble place to come from. I've often thought about it as being that incredible combination of hubris that makes you believe that you can have a world-class organization, and you need to do that with and through the genius of the organizational people you can bring in on the one hand, and then also then the humility to know that we can't do it without that contribution of others, and there's so much to be learned. When you think about the relationship of the board with a chief executive, what lessons can you take away, because you have a particularly interesting set of complexities when it comes to the nature of the type of board that you might have at the hospital there. Could you talk about the relationship building or the intentionality that you have that
Absolutely.
creates an organization that is supportive?
Absolutely. And the board of a not-for-profit health system is probably very different from the board of a Fortune 500 for-profit industry, obviously. And number one, we are a precious community asset. So we are here to serve the kids in the community. So if there is someone in industry out there who wants to bring a company to San Diego, they can turn and say, we know that the children of the workforce that's going to come and work for company X is going to have healthcare provided to them. And so the people who are here, the stewards of the organization, our board of trustees, these are people who have deep, deep roots generally in our community or beyond it, and truly, truly care about the success and the mission. And that is, it takes a special person to be on the board of one of these organizations. They get paid absolutely nothing other than the absolute gratitude that we give them. And we what I realized early on, it's really important to form trusting relationships with the board, to be transparent with them. We are a heavily, heavily regulated industry. And it's interesting, some things that make sense in the business world, given the regulation in healthcare, it might not be things that we can do. But to be transparent, number one, it's about quality for us. We're here for the mission. Also, no margin, no mission. So we need to make sure that we're financially solvent, able to be here for the future, forever. But being able to be transparent and have good relationships with the board and recognize how they're showing up and being here to support the community asset is really important.
Well, I want to thank you so much for this conversation, Patrick. It's so instructive, I think, to people who are stepping in seat or aspiring and being groomed for that role, to hear from an individual like yourself who's had so many roles and so many different impacts in the world and in society and on the lives of people, and now leveraged as chief executive of one of the most amazing hospital groups in the world. So thank you so much for the honor of getting your time today.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to learn from you and to hopefully share something for others.